want to talk about your entrepreneurial side in your business, and how did you get into, like, what was it about construction development? Was it because the resort and this opportunity that was kind of sitting in front of you that you wanted to take advantage of?
The entrepreneurial piece, I always had an entrepreneurial spirit, but there wasn't, if I'm being real, it wasn't like I wasn't clear like, hey, from the beginning, I'm going to be this entrepreneur. I was focused on soccer the whole way around, right? Like everything was about soccer, but I just started off by just working W-2 job, and I really wasn't thinking about anything other than like, okay, how do I go from making 50 a year to what do I need to do to make 72,000 a year? And what was the big, crazy changing point for me, the moment in life that changed everything, was when I had my But I think where you can really get people and really people can get to know you is in that YouTube platform. So we're going to start really pushing attention into that. And we're going to focus on like 3 to 5 minute videos. That's sort of what we're going to do. We already have the 1 hour content with podcasts that goes on to YouTube. So now we're going to chunk like 3 to 5 minutes. Hey, this is what this looks like. This is what this scope looks like, rather than the 30 seconds. This is the foundation. Here is 3 minutes foundation. So
Yeah.
we'll see how
That's good, because I want to keep in touch about that, because that's what we're doing, is that we got the podcast, the reels, a bunch of reels to keep the content, the information. Your reels are really good. And then, so next is the YouTube education.
Yeah.
Like I
going
sit
deeper.
down.
Exactly.
And I think the biggest thing, it's like, how do I get pre-approved for a mortgage? Like, they just search for that.
Yeah.
And it comes up, or how do you build a house from the ground up, or what it is, and that's how I learned how to play guitar. That's how I learned. Like all this
on YouTube
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah. So Connor, I think Connor's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But educating, I just know a lot of people who blow it up.
Yeah.
By just doing these 5 to 10 minute videos,
Yeah.
and I think I could do 5 minute and get like really good at 5
Oh,
minutes.
yeah.
I think 10 minutes can be rambling a little bit, depending on, it could be too broad.
Yeah, and I think the attention span's shortening, right? So like what used to be long form 10 minute, I think is now like 3 to 5 minutes, and you're in the sweet spot. You can get all the information in there, high energy, make it happen. And one thing that I thought about for you is like, especially on the mortgage side, somebody's like, okay, now I want to buy a house. What does that path look like? Doing like a quick clip and then go to either a whiteboard or I've seen some of those mortgage guys go to like a note pen, so now you're writing on it. And there's something about going from like face to seeing content on like a notepad or a whiteboard. There's something that happens there.
I was thinking about that this morning. That's funny.
Yeah.
Because you got to show them the numbers. You can talk about it, but then you want to like visualize it. And I just got to figure out how to.
Yeah. It's like, here's how I help this person, like this situation, this person qualify for this, and then break it down in the numbers, boom. Because then they can start to picture, what it takes. I think it's if you're going to buy a house for the first time, I think there's so many question marks you're having. And first is like, how do I actually get qualified? Or even somebody that's planning on trying to get a mortgage, it's like, well, how do I improve my credit score? Where do I need to be at? What can I qualify for? And there's all these like, it feels big and scary, right?
Yeah, but then you just go to YouTube, it's like, oh, this guy's pretty good. What's his next video? Let's watch his next video.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think if you could have a series for that, like first-time home buyers, things to pay attention to. Some people don't even know that they can put 3.5% to 5% down, and that they can actually do that more than just one time, because it's called a first-time home buyer program, right? So you could tap it. There's so many things that like, when I think about when I was learning how to buy a house, that if I had content that I could go to, massively valuable.
Yeah, there's so much information out there, and there's just bad information. Like, especially you get hooked up with there's a lot of bad real estate agents, a lot of bad loan officers in any industry there is. But like, some people come to me and the information they got is completely wrong. Yeah, like and I have to they almost question me.
Yeah, they're like, what?
They're like, well, that's not what I heard. I'm like, look. Yeah. But if they don't know you, how are they going to trust you? Yeah. So that but that YouTube stuff is going to be exciting. So I want to keep an eye on your stuff. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Builder, you're a builder. Yep. Developer. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your background. You're from Bend. Yeah. So I grew up in the Netherlands. My father was a European tour player. My mother was a school teacher, and with an amazing family. My dad was a dreamer. My mom
super amazing supporter. When she met him, he's like, hey, I'm going to go play on the tour. And she was sort of like,
tennis?
No, golf.
Golf.
Yeah, she's like, you're kind of crazy. Turns out they were both kind of crazy. They ended up touring all around, living in a car, started in a car, hotel, from hotel to hotel, all around Europe. She was caddying for him. He was working to get his tour card. And so they made a career out of it. They made a career out of chasing that dream, and they figured out how to make that happen together. I got to grow up watching them do that. And then as my dad finished his golf career, the next dream came, and that was to one day own and run a resort. And that's when we started looking at, my mom's from Eugene, Oregon. Mm-hmm. My dad was a Dutchman. Yeah. We were living in the Netherlands, and the dream was we would vacation here. The dream was to come back one day. Mm-hmm. You know, if anyone that's been to Central Oregon, they know how special it is. Yeah. So we would come every summer, and as my dad winded down his playing career and his coaching career, he really wanted to go and get a resort. And then boom, Tellero Resort was born from that. And if anyone knows about that resort, it's a beautiful resort here in Bend, and it's been quite the process watching that happen.
Yeah. I didn't even know that he was your dad until like last week.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
I'm very lucky. He's a man. He's a man I look up to more than anyone in this world. I've learned a ton from him, both just on the personal side, but also on the business side. Right? I'm very blessed. I'm not a self-made man. I've had a huge infrastructure around me that's allowed us to be able to build what you see today. It wouldn't be there without that infrastructure, right? So I'm extremely blessed and grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, that's good that you say that, because it's hard to say like self-made. Like, what does that even mean?
I'm far from self-made. I'm not self-made at all. Yeah.
It's like self-made, like I could say that I'm self-made because I grew up poor or whatever, not poor, but like, lower middle class. And then we worked our way up, but like the infrastructure around me from sports is what, like, that's not self-made. Yeah. There were people in your life that helped you get to where you are.
Yeah. Sports for me, it's interesting you say the sports thing, because I think that the value of sports, even if you don't go and play professional, the life lessons that come from playing a sport competitively and sticking with it, what you have to learn on how to improve, how to analyze yourself, how to build skills, how to become a team player. Sports to me gives somebody a competitive edge in life, even if they don't go and play professionally, right? And it was a huge, that's what soccer was for me. I thought I always wanted to be a soccer player, and then the reality sets in, right? As you raise levels, I played Division I, and then at Division I, the reality sets in, and I had an identity crisis for 2 years after my college career. I was like, what's next here? Little did I know all the life lessons and skills and how to become a good, strong competitor that I learned through soccer was actually going to be the foundation that I could now raise my family on, that I could build a business on, right? So I think sports are a huge competitive edge for people.
There's no question. It's funny that you said the identity crisis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Connor, we've had several podcasts about people, military people, just talk about that transition. It took me about 12 years, not 2 years.
Yeah.
Because it, like, I don't know, like D1 to professional, and then it was like, you have all those skills, but I didn't know how to like switch gears. Yeah. And a lot of people never recover.
I know.
Like, they just don't recover. But you're right about the platform. I talk about this all the time with my ex-teammates. We talk about how hard it is for us to like integrate back into society when we got done and all that stuff. But the teamwork, and you have an edge. Yeah. And it's hard to really explain that. Yeah. But I'm glad that I didn't know you were a D1 player. Yeah. Where'd you play?
I played 2 years at St. Louis, and then I played 2 years at University of Portland where we finished out.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. And I think some of the biggest things that I even take in today is, my coach there, a guy who, after my father, he's probably the second most influential man in my life. His name's Nick Carlinvoy.
From UP?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he came in my senior year. And one of the biggest things that he taught us was, he taught us a lot of things. Begin with the end in mind, right? If you want something, begin with the end in mind and then make a plan to work backwards. But one of the things I think, if you want to be successful, pressure is going to come, right? Mm-hmm. So it's how do you deal with that pressure? And he always said, like, don't get too high, don't get too low. Stay even-keeled emotionally. Celebrate what you want to see more of, but don't get too high, don't get too low, and then you'll be able to deal with, you'll be able to get to where you want to go. He said, like, study any of the greatest champions. What do? They don't, like, if something goes wrong, they don't let it get them so down that they can't make the next play, and if something goes right, they're not so high on it being right that they miss the next play, right?
Totally. So, and that's the difference between, a minor league baseball player, or D1 to minor league, and then minor league especially to the big league. It wasn't talent.
Yeah.
It's not talent.
What was it? What was it?
It was the emotional stability.
Yeah.
It was emotional stability and consistency.
Yeah.
Those two things.
Yeah.
That's what I say. There's so much talent out there.
Yeah. And that can be trained, right? I remember looking at myself like I was a pretty hothead. So if you were to look at like end of high school Dirk and how I would react to things because I wanted to win so bad, right? Mm-hmm. Versus end of college Dirk, I grew a lot in how to deal with those emotions. You know, before somebody could get in my head and maybe I'd come and tackle them and I'd get a red card and that hurts the team, right?
Yeah, right.
And then towards the end, I was able to start controlling, like you said, those emotions, because if you have good coaches along the way, right, they'll help you reflect on that and they'll help you become the best version of yourself rather than maybe the reactive version of yourself.
Yeah.
So,
no, I can definitely. There's a scar right here. Yeah. That's from accidentally breaking my hand by losing my cool in baseball.
Yeah, because exactly.
But it's funny because I never was, I had grown up and then done such a great job of controlling my emotions. And then it was like one day, one mistake. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, well, that's why you don't do that. Yeah. Just a good reminder at 21 years old to not throw tantrums.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's hard.
And miss a half a season.
It's hard, though. I know. Yeah, it is a good reminder.
So the failure part. So you're very entrepreneurial. Before I even knew you, I just look at your like Instagram and stuff. I'm like, this guy's been pretty impressive, you know.
Thank you.
And I want to talk about your entrepreneurial side in your business and how did you get into like what was it about construction development? Was it because the resort and this opportunity that was kind of sitting in front of you that you wanted to take advantage of?
Yeah, it was.
Because basically there was empty lots 5 years ago. Now there's like nothing.
Yeah, it's all gone now. The entrepreneurial piece, I always had an entrepreneurial spirit, but there wasn't, if I'm being real, it wasn't I wasn't clear like, hey, from the beginning, I'm going to be this entrepreneur. I was focused on soccer the whole way around, right? Like everything was about soccer. And then, like I said, I had that identity crisis trying to figure out after I realized I wasn't going to play soccer at the level that I had hoped for. Mm-hmm. I could have maybe gone USL, but then I talked to some people and you could see what happens if you go and chase that dream. If you're not MLS caliber, you go and chase that dream, you get spit out at 30 and now you're at a disadvantage, right? Yep. So it was time to figure out what to do next, and I just tapped into my resources. Like I said, I'm very blessed to have a huge infrastructure of people around me because of my parents, because of my other family members. But I just started off by just working W-2 job, and I really wasn't thinking about anything other than like, okay, how do I go from making $50 a year to what do I need to do to make $72,000 a year? And what was the big, crazy changing point for me, the moment in life that changed everything, was when I had my first son. That's when I had this huge wake-up call, a massive wake-up call, and that's what kicked me into starting to think about like, okay, now I need to do something. There was actually a fire that was lit. It was I was working for a company at that time. Great company, no issues, like phenomenal company, phenomenal opportunity. But my son was born, and the COO of that at that time, 2 days after my son was born, he said like, hey, congratulations on the baby. Can you make sure to put your PTO in, right? My paid time off right?
Like,
and then I'm like, and I understand they have to run their business, et cetera, right? So there was nothing against that, but that made me think to myself, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I need to choose between vacation time and having a baby, and that just didn't sit well for me. So at that moment, actually, I remember vividly what happened. It lit this fire, and I just started to think to myself, I have this kid now. I need to figure out how to build a generational legacy for this family. And I wrote out the business plan, and all I relied on at that point was, what's my network? What's some of my baseline skill, which at that point I'd been working in the construction and development world. And I said, hey, let's just try to take advantage of this and pull the trigger.
Yeah, interesting. Well, that's a scary thing to do for a lot of people.
It was scary for me. It took me, from the time I wrote the business plan to actually pulling the trigger, was still a 10-month period, right? Because there's always things in the way of pulling that trigger, right?
What were you doing before? Like, were you business or what do you call it, construction management?
Yeah, exactly.
That's I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
That's a cool degree.
Yeah.
So you came out kind of what, estimating?
No, I didn't have a degree in construction management, but I was working building houses and apartments. So I didn't have a degree in it, but I was working in it. So I saw it every day, right?
Yeah, so you learned on the job, and you're like, well, how do I take advantage of it and be self-employed and do it myself?
Exactly. As soon as I was like, hey, I want to start my own thing, I just said, what are the only skills I have outside of playing soccer? Was, okay, I've built some experience in this real estate development side, and I have all these relationships. Let's take advantage of that.
Yeah, interesting. So it's funny because when you have your first kid, a lot of people go the opposite. Like, I need a paycheck.
Yeah. Oh, that's tempting. I mean,
but you're like, I'm going all in because you either go either way, right?
Yeah.
And that's where that like level of risk or just aggressiveness comes in.
Yeah. Instantly, I thought more to myself, and it was that fire that was there, right? I thought more to myself, how do I make sure that I don't have a paycheck, and I create a foundation that something, it was a son, was my first son, that my son could potentially take over if he wants to. But I wanted to, immediately, I was like, that fire was lit, right? Put your PTO, and I'm like, I'm not gonna, what are you talking about? So I was like, whatever we need to do to get out of that, let's make it happen.
Nice.
And the funny thing about that whole PTO thing is now I take much less vacations, and there's definitely no paid vacations when you start your own business. I think sometimes it's like glamorous to start your own business. Everyone's like, I'm gonna have all this time. It's like, no, you're gonna have no time. You're gonna have more pressure. But eventually, if you stick with it, I think there will be a compound moment where, then you do have that freedom.
Yeah.
It's just a longer road.
The cost of it sounds bad because I think you should take vacations or at least time off. But one of the purposes of living in Bend is I don't have this like thing where I need to take a vacation because my life is so well rounded. Even you can run the business. I can spend time with the kids. And you're like, I want to take a vacation. Okay, let's go paddling. Or like, I go mountain biking or skiing or whatever it is. So living here relieves that FOMO of vacation. But what was your first project like? Tell me a little bit.
So we took the leap. The first like major project that we put together was an 84 unit apartment deal. And that was, each step there's some fear for sure. But, when we put it together, it was, again, I have the infrastructure. I have people around me who are already in the world. So I had this huge advantage, right? If you're just trying to get in it yourself, it's extremely difficult. So I had this massive advantage. And I had to find a way to take advantage of the opportunity that I had over here, right? So we put that deal together. And, when you're doing that, interesting thing about development is, especially like ground up development, you're not buying this existing building. If you're buying an existing building, you can go and ask for the trailing 12, you can ask for what the rent's for, you can see the building, you can see the deferred maintenance. You have all these data points, and then you could say, hey, based on, we're either going to cut operating expenses because we know how we're really smart in that way, we can cut this, and this, or we're going to force equity by doing a remodel, right? Well, in development, you don't have any past history. All you can do is make your best guesses, be really good with your pro formas. And the thing about pro formas are, you can make anything look good on an Excel sheet. So we had to really be conservative in how we underwrote that deal, especially the first deal. And so we ran 3 scenarios, and it turned out, that was a couple of years ago. Today, that building finished. We're in the lease-up phase, and we're very blessed that our first project turned out good. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. We're hitting all of our projections. It's renting up nicely. We're on budget, on time. So we got very lucky with that baseline, and I think that that's really set us up to now build a strong future because we have something we can point to, yes, we did this right. And we were able to be very conservative in those future bets we were making, right?
Is that the building where you added the storage units?
Yeah.
And you talked about the added revenue just from the storage units.
And that's what's crazy, right? When you look at those, once you start to learn the game, what I like about the real estate game in general is it's not difficult, but it takes hard work. It takes some street smarts, learn the formula, learn the blueprint, but it's not like this really challenging, difficult thing. It just takes a lot of work, right? Once you learn the process, like that storage one, once you understand how these commercial buildings are valued, which is off of cap rates, capitalization rates, which is dictated based on whatever the market wants for their money at that time, right? So once you understand that those trade off of something called net operating income, your NOI, plus a cap rate, you can start to think about, hey, if I even increase the value of this property or the NOI, if I find ways like adding 20 storage units to increase the net operating income of this property by, let's even say, just $2,000, what that impact is, $2,000 a month times 12 divided by a cap rate, the value starts, you can add hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So once you understand that, if you can find ways, same thing with rents at scale. If you can increase rents by $50 a month, it doesn't sound like that much.
But over 80 units.
Exactly.
It's just incremental tweaks.
Tweaks. And then right now, because there's a lot of supply and there's definitely a battle, flattening of rents and more supply coming on, we're really focused in on that operational expense side, right? Because just like finding ways to add more like top line revenue, if you let your expenses run,
I know. When you say perform, I immediately think of my performer that I have in my business, where it's just constant leverage. We literally went over subscriptions, which I tell people if they're budgeting, I'm like, look at your subscriptions. I bet you probably have a couple $100 a month
that you don't even know about. Exactly. No, straight up, and that you forget about. It doesn't feel like that much, but if you put that value on what that looks like, it's huge.
Yeah. So it's just like, we went over it. It's funny, but it's the same thing. You go over your stuff and be like, gosh, we could save X amount over here, over here. And then, because if rents are flattening, you got to do what you got to do. What did you learn from this project the most, the first project? Like, what is a mistake that you, well, maybe not a mistake, but something you're like, wow, well, I won't do that again.
Yeah, one big mistake that I made is the interest carry along the loan. So the interest that we knew, the capital that had to be put out for, the equity part of the capital that had to be put out to start the project, but I underestimated how much capital would have to be paid in interest along the
during the construction.
So
you're basically an interest only construction loan.
Yep. And I didn't pro forma that the right way.
Gotcha.
So we were too low on that. It was a big lesson, way too low on that. So there was additional interest that had to be paid along the way. And when I built that first model, that was a big gap, a big hole in the model. So
was it because as they do the draws, they tacked on to the balance and then the interest went up? Is that, or did they go, okay, it's X amount of dollars, you're going to pay interest on this even though we haven't done the draws on it?
It is what you said. So you don't pay interest until you actually use the money. But the problem was I'm an idiot and I didn't plan for that interest. So when I built the model, we did.
It's okay, man.
Yeah, but you asked. So and I told you. So that was the big problem. Now where we were blessed was from a pro forma, what we had conservatively projected on rents, we were coming in $200 or $300 more than what we had projected. We built it. We were planning on building it in 18 months. We built it in 12 months. So we hit some other really good milestones. But that was one big challenge there that, looking back, that would be one adjustment that we really needed to make in general. So,
okay. Yeah. So difference between going out and let's say a 5-unit apartment, small.
Yeah.
Because I do up to 4. Yep. So anything over 5, and that gets into commercial, let's say. Like if someone wants to do that, I'm like, I want to get in the apartment complex game. Are you going to, their first one? Yep. Just a guy like me who's had rentals, didn't like it, sold them. Yep. But I'm like, I'm going to get in the multifamily. Yep. Would you build or would you buy? I mean, obviously it depends on the revenue and all that stuff, but as an experience doing both, like what would you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say build because that's my game, right? Because there's
what would be the benefit, I guess?
The forced equity we talked about. Mm-hmm. The benefit of, it's easy for me to say build because I'm in the game, I know it, and I know the rules. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to just jump right into building, do it all yourself if you don't have an expert on your team that can help you execute on it, because there's a big learning curve, and you need to find a way to either get an expert on your team so you don't get hurt, you don't have cost overruns, etc. Mm-hmm. But the benefit of doing the development route is there's a lot of that forced equity we talked about, what you can build it for versus what it's worth. There's a lot of built-in equity up front. Versus if you're buying something that, let's say we sold you the building we just built, well, we're capturing all that equity. Yeah. It's gonna sit there, you're gonna get depreciation. But the only way that you're gonna get that forced equity they talk about is either being able to, we're way under market, so you get market growth, or just seasoning in time, right? Mm-hmm. So you could buy an existing building that's distressed, remodel, and that's a good way to get forced equity. Mm-hmm. But that development one I like so much because especially if you're in the game of asset accumulation, which we are, now think about just the lifetime of your building. You go hunt a distressed building, usually those are older buildings, let's say it's 30 years old. Mm-hmm. Well, that building's been up for 30 years. So if you go and buy that, you're gonna have a lot more problems a lot sooner than if you go and learn how to build from the ground up. Now we've got a brand new building, 84 units. The lifetime of that building, right? The seasoning and lifetime of that building is way longer than that building that's 30 years old. So we know that the problems aren't going to be as much. We know that, there's warranty on it, etc. So I really like that model. And if you do it right and you design it smart and you are conservative, then it can do a lot of really, really good things for you.
Are you good at the designing part too, or did you have a team of people help you? Like what would, if you're as a leader of your business, What is your strength?
It's a great question. I would say I'm a business builder, so I know the numbers. That's like my biggest strength, is knowing how to create a project that's financially feasible through the numbers. Like that 84 unit, I'll give you, the idea. When that was first designed, the units on average were 975 square feet for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. 975 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Well, I know that everyone bids off square footage. So I know that framers bid off square footage. I know that our framing packages off square footage, painters, drywall, etc. Everyone, when they get the plans, they look at how many square feet it is, and that's what they create their bid off, right? Well, I look at that and I say very quickly, can we fit the same programming, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, in 850 square feet? So we're gonna cut off 125 square feet per unit, or 10,500 square feet that we have to build, right? Before we send this out to bid, before we send this out to budget, can we reduce the square footage, not change the programming, because we need 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and can we intelligently design it that way? So that's what I worked very hard with the architects. Hey, figure out how to make this a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in 850 square feet. We cut off 125 square feet that equated to 10,500 square feet that we didn't have to build, and that saves you, on a major project, that saves you millions of dollars.
Okay, so that savings in square footage, was that adding more units?
No, it's just purely...
Or land?
It's just purely value engineering. Rather than building a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment unit that's 975 square feet, we built a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 850 square foot unit.
Yeah.
So you're just
less
building,
cost.
just less building material.
Yeah.
Just literally less.
Is there a big difference in the rents though?
Think about it. When's the last time? That's because that's the first thing you think about. When's the last time? As long as the living room, the spaces feel good. When's the last time you're like, oh, I'm gonna rent this place instead because it's got 100 more square feet? You're not thinking about that. You're thinking, what are the views? What's the rent?
The feel of it.
What does it feel like? And as long as you can't value engineer square footage out so that you kill yourself and got this tiny little room that nobody wants to live in, right? Then you're in trouble. But if you do it smart, right, and you look at the numbers, and that's what we did. That's how we're getting the highest per square foot rent in Redmond right now, over $2 a square foot. Why do you think that is? It's because people still rent the 2-bedroom, 2-bath, but we were able to cut out some of that square footage.
Nice.
Without killing the feel. You have to be careful. You can't kill the feel.
Yeah, for sure. How long does that take from, when you get the land until like when you're done?
Yeah, the whole process depends on what municipality you're in. Bend, you're going to be waiting. Bend feels anti-development, believe it or not. How long it takes is almost unbelievable. It's probably the most frustrating part of being in the development game, is having to wait for your permits, your approvals, etc. You know what it's like to be a private business person. We value our time, and we'll trade money for time, and we understand how important time is, right? Well, if you work in the government here right now, unfortunately, because they're so backlogged, things can take 9 to 12 months just to get land use approval.
Wow.
Right? And then on top, once you get that, you could take exactly. So some of these major projects, think about the impact of that. And we have a housing crisis, but it takes so long to get permits. Interest rates, you know what happened with interest rates. Some of these major projects that we're going to go, from the time they submitted, let's say you submitted for permits, and now it's going to take 12 months to get land use approval. 12 months or 9 months. What happened between when you submitted for interest rates and when you got approved?
It changes the equation.
It changes everything. So I think it's a little bit ironic and a little bit challenging that everyone says, hey, we have this housing crisis, but it takes that long to get a permit, and nobody's pressuring that.
Yeah.
That's to me is the definition of insanity, right?
It is. I was just thinking about that because I'm like, okay, clearly a national, especially in the Northwest, in the coastal areas, but builders, I'm like, why don't they just build more? There's a market for it. I'm like, because there's an affordability issue for them too. So how are they going to make a $600,000 house? Their margins are like this. Yeah. So they have to look at, well, does this make sense
all the
for
risk
me?
And all the risks.
You get all the risk, and you start buying these huge plots of land, and so it's super complicated. Yeah. You can't just go out there and build stuff, and they got to be profitable.
Yeah, and one way to do that would be to speed up time, right? I'll tip my hat. Deschutes County, they went from being a 6 to 8 week to get a permit to they're speeding it up. They're like under 4 weeks. I got one in 3 days the other day.
Nice.
So they're seeing that and they're saying, hey, let's respond to this. We have a housing issue. Let's respond to this.
Are they putting more bodies in there?
Yeah, I think more bodies. They're simplifying the process too. Sometimes this is legit what happens with this permitting process, and this is when it gets really frustrating. Is like you submit a permit. Most people in the world are same architects, same builders, like that are doing any volume. It's the same people doing the volume, right? So let's say there's one little comment, like this beam needs to be adjusted, or size this beam up from this size to another size. What they'll do is they'll put that comment on. You get kicked back to you. You have to update the plans, and you go back to the line. Now, whoever's reviewing it reviews everything else they have that's in the front of the line, then you. Oh, wow. So think about that one comment just put you back another 2 or 4 weeks. This is what I think, this is, again, if this was my private business, I would never do it. What I would do, we already have inspections anyways. So that one comment would just be redlined. You'd say, upsize this beam, check at inspection, because you already have to check at inspection anyways. Release the plans, builder can start building. Their license is on the line anyway. Structural engineer's license is on the line anyways, right? So to me, nobody's thinking about how do we solve this process. They're just kicking back this little comment. Now you go back in.
But yeah, it's almost like it should be kind of like how we underwrite a loan.
Yeah.
Because you know about this process.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to go, okay, Dirk, you sent in your pay stub. We'll get back to you in 3 days.
Yeah.
Because I have 2 new files.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to look at it the same day and go, oh, because we already have everything. We want to move you along.
Exactly. Because you're a private business. That's the difference. Like
they don't care.
No, exactly. That's what I mean. You're a private business. You're like, no, we're going, move it along. Or I'm a private business. You know what? From the time that I get the full construction drawings until I submit for permits, it's the same day. Because I know how long it's going to take to get the permits reviewed, right? So that's why I think if you could somehow figure out a way, and it's not the fault of the people like in the system. The system's hard. Like I couldn't imagine trying to build a system that deals with the SDCs, the permitting. Like no fault of that. It's just we need private business entrepreneurial people and incentives to speed up. Because one of the things that creates a housing crisis is how hard it is to get permits. Yeah. It's
just the bureaucracy of government, which is just natural.
Yeah.
Like it's just inescapable. What about the government outsourcing this underwriting of permits process?
Yeah, exactly.
Go like, hey, we'll knock this stuff out for you and keep it rolling.
Exactly.
And then, they just outsource it.
I think it'd be a phenomenal idea. I always think like people move on incentives. Like time is money, right? So think about it like this. Think about how much you would pay if you're a 200-unit apartment project and you have to wait 12 months to get approved for land use, and interest rates were at 3%. You could pay the examiners more. You could pay the city could make more. I would pay what. And some places do have this. You could pay an expedite fee, a sizable expedite fee, and say, hey, it's guaranteed that in 2 months we'll have your permit approved. I bet you so many people would elect to do it. And Deschutes County does have that now. It's a small fee and it's well worth doing. So they are starting to work that component out, but you just have to be incentivized, right? Even as a plan examiner, think about what incentivizes a human to do anything. Well, we need carrots in front of us. And so if there was a plan examiner who still had to follow their job, et cetera, but would get paid, let's say, $100 every one they push out, I guarantee you the coffee breaks would be shorter. You know what I mean? It's just straight up. Like that's just the way it works.
I mean, look, I get it. Like they go to work, they're going to get paid no matter what.
Exactly.
And if they don't know you, there's no incentive. So it'd be interesting to see how they could do that.
It's hard, and it's easy to talk about it and complain about it.
Business people, but
it's easy to complain about it, like I do, right? It's hard to put action behind it and find solutions. So I'm very well aware of that, and complainers don't get much. So it's it is the most frustrating part about the development game because I just want to get going and build. I'm addicted to building. So
that's awesome. And so you're doing those not cottages, but whatever those smaller houses at the top of Tethero. Yep. Are you doing one of those or two?
We're doing it. We have 4 under construction there. We're right now. We probably at any time we probably have 10 to 15 homes plus some apartment projects. So right now I've got a 24-unit apartment that we're finishing out. We've got, I'd say, 10 to 15 homes that we're building. and some good stuff in the pipeline as well. And that's really where our capacity is at. We've got 7 employees now. Team's doing amazing. That's been its own challenge within itself, right?
You got to manage. Yeah, it's totally different. It's not just generating the business; it's managing the team.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm so lucky to have amazing leaders in the team. I got a couple. I have a master carpenter who was a master carpenter for 25 years. He runs all of our Central Oregon in the field side. I've got really good guys in the office to help and run the project management and the admin. So I got very, very fortunate and blessed to, after going through it a couple times, get some really, really good employees. And now I'm really working on myself, looking internally, saying like, you know, what are my big weaknesses? Like, where am I not a good leader? How am I, like, what, are we producing the right resources for our team? You know, and even sometimes I'm like, holy cow, like, what's in front of us? It starts to this whole different picture. When it's just you isolated, right? It's not that big of a deal. But now you have 7 people you care dearly about, and how do you make sure that they have what they need and that you have work going in front of them? So the stresses as you evolve in entrepreneurship, or the challenges, they become different, right? So I'm looking for resources and ways to work through that.
How are you managing all of the labor? You just go, your carpenter guy, he goes and handles that?
Yep, we are 95% subcontracted. Yeah. So we use, you know, we're all subcontracted.
But how's the labor around here? It's just like there's so much building and there's just like not a lot of people. Yep. So I'm wondering, like, where do these people come from?
Yeah, I think we had even in any company, we had, you go through, you're only as good as your team, including your subcontractors. So we went through a couple cycles of that, you know, where you get hurt a little bit by the subcontractors that you're using. But now we finally got to this, and you're pulling teeth, or you're paying a little bit more because you got to try to get them out on your job site, or your job site's taking longer because you don't have that much going on. But the nice thing is now that we're at a place where we usually in a neighborhood have 3 to 4 builds, minimum of 2 builds in one area going at a time. So we have some leverage, and it's better for the subs to show up because they can knock 2 out or 3 out or 4 out, right? So we've now been very blessed to be able to have really good hands and minds working on those projects.
Where do you find the, I know we're digging deep into this, but it's super interesting because my family's in construction, but I was like, no, it's not like, I went to work when I was a kid and cleaned that pile up. I'm like, oh, I'm good with the construction.
That's where they started you at.
Yeah, no, like
because they got you. Yeah, they did. You're just you're clean. The pile never ends.
Yeah, drywall and metal stud framing. And I'm like 10 years old or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, where do you find like a chance to, you know, is it like developments where somebody comes in and buys all this land and you buy one of the lots, or like, how does that work? Like, if you have 7 or 8 projects going, like, that's a lot. And you're pulled in a lot of different directions. So how do you even find the land?
Yeah, it's sort of a mixed bag. It always goes back to a relationship game, right? So everything goes back to the relationships that you've been able to build. And like I said, I'm very blessed because of my father, my mother, the infrastructure. I already had a huge relationships, and then we've met some new ones just from being in the environment. There's a great friend of mine. His name is Jake Hermeling. He's an amazing entrepreneur. Yeah, he's an amazing entrepreneur. A lot of deal flow comes from Jake, between Jake and myself, right? And then and other brokers and other opportunities. And so I think as you get in there, you start to see what works and what doesn't. And you know, the relationship building, I would say, is the most important part of the real estate development.
Because they're going to bring you the opportunity. Yep. It's just like in my business, I have people I prospect and build relationships to bring in, and it's the same thing. But so you get to the point where it's just like people come, you go, hey, there's something getting built out here, we can get you X amount of lots type thing.
Yeah, and now we're doing we're about to kick off on our own subdivision. That's the ultimate dream. And goal is to...
For houses?
Yeah, we're doing we just built 2 fourplexes in Madras on some lots that we found. And most of the deals we buy are just off the MLS, right? They're just lots on the MLS, and we just make it happen.
Okay, so it's not like anything super
no magic, no. It's just, that's the nice thing I think about learning the ground up game in general. You know, buy a piece of land, build from the ground up, is once you learn that, what other people maybe see as a challenging thing or having to build on a piece of land, we're like, that's pure, great, amazing opportunity. Versus if you're like in the investment game and you're trying to find a distressed property, like everyone, the wholesalers are trying to get it, the fix and flippers are trying to get it, right? So that's like an off-market trying to battle type deal. And so most of our deals have been on the market outside of 1 or 2 maybe, and we're not hitting these huge home runs. We're not trying to hit huge home runs. We're just trying to hit singles and doubles over and over and over and over. Yeah.
be consistent.
Yeah, just over and over.
Systematic.
Yep.
Get your costs down. Get the system down and roll.
Yep.
So so when you see a piece of land, you don't get like when I think about this, because I don't know the game, I'm like, oh my God, I screwed that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't have the relationship to come in. And,
I would think the same thing if somebody asked me to give them a mortgage, right? So we're good. We know what we know.
Yeah, right. So it's super interesting.
Yeah.
So the subdivision, tell me about that.
Yeah.
There's obviously, it seems like out east, there's like unlimited.
Yeah.
Like there's a housing shortage. There's a lot of land.
Yep.
So what's going on?
Yeah, we bought this 3.5 acre piece right across in Madras, which I like Madras a lot. I like the opportunity, the land base, the cost basis. If you try to buy 3.5 acres in Bend, you're paying millions and millions of dollars. Over there, you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's right across the street from the hospital. Beautiful area. And we bought that piece of land. Originally, we were going to do some apartments on it, but interest rates started skyrocketing. And it's interesting on that one because everyone's like, oh, what's the big deal, 7%? Well, when it was 3 or 4% and now it's 7%, that's 100% increase in the cost of capital. And so those larger development deals or those multifamily deals, they just don't pencil at a 7% interest rate. They work at a low or like mid fives. They work at a 6% interest rate, right? Because cost of construction is way up. Inflation, that's sticky stuff, right?
Yeah,
it's like inflation for prices to come down. It's very hard because like once people get used to buying something at somewhere, like it's sticky. It just is the reality. Yeah. So point being, we were going to do that. We had to pivot because of the market, and so now we're doing a 10-lot subdivision, 4plexes. So rather than chunk it into one big one, we had good success building those other 4plexes. We'll do a 10-lot subdivision, and we'll sell the one. I think there's a market for the sale of it, but we might end up keeping it. It just gives us a lot of flexibility. So 10 lots will go in. We'll build 3, 4plexes at a time. If we want to keep them as rentals, we will. If we want to sell 1 or 2 off, we will. And now we have this flexibility rather than going and building 60 units, which is a lot of pressure, a lot of capital, and the interest rates are really hard. You can bear a 7% interest rate on a 4plex.
Yeah. So okay, that's awesome.
That's the strategy. A little pivot. We call them positive pivots, baby.
No, I'm constantly pivoting right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you're.
I'm either hiring, and then it's like it's just okay. We're ready to hire. We run lean. Right now. Yeah. And it's funny. It's just right when you're about to hire, like you got to pull it back or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Constantly look at your costs.
I know.
But it's kind of fun. Too.
You've been probably having to pivot more than anyone, and all you could see when you have tough times, the people who are here to stay, who are really experienced, who are experts, true experts, masters at their craft. They stick through it, they figure out positive ways to do it, and they double down even on like investing and making it happen. And all the people who are in it for the wave or the quick buck, they're all gone. They're back bartending. They're doing whatever they were going to do, right? So it's actually kind of good as long as you can stick through it. Shakes out kind of all the others.
Oh, it does. Yeah. So 2000, the crash, the Great Recession. I was in mortgage. Yeah. And the same thing. It just, I look back on those mistakes I made in that period. Like I just didn't work hard.
Is that what you reflected on that?
Yeah, because I was just like, it was so easy. Yeah. And then I only knew easy, right? And then it became really hard, so I kind of stepped back. But the people who didn't step back did really well when it came out the other end. So this cycle, more mature, more family, I'm just a little bit more mature. Yeah. And it's like some days you're like, this sucks. Yeah. But you're like, it's going to be fine. Yeah. You just got to get through it. Yeah. And then, there's just people dropping like flies and you're just eating up market share, mind share right now. Yeah. So it's round 2 for me.
Good.
In a tough market.
Yeah. And you pivoted on it. And like you said, you learned from it.
Yeah. You got to lay people off a little bit. You got to clean up the expenses and then you got to double down. So working with the social media stuff and just, how I approach everything, like we didn't cut back on the marketing. We actually increased our marketing. Yeah,
a lot of people would be afraid to do that, right? It's a fear. They would be fearful to do that. They would pull back. That's the zig when everyone else zags, right? Most people are not doing that. Yeah. So that I think I don't know for sure. I think that's a smart move.
Yeah. Well, let's hope.
It takes balls.
Yeah. It does.
At least you're going for it.
Yeah, it's like when we bought our house on Randall. Yeah. It was like COVID, people were freaking out, and the builder, I think, was just like, I need to get rid of this house.
Yeah,
it was a spec.
Scary.
Yeah, and he just dirt too. Yeah. In the plans, and I'm like in my head going, okay, this is the time when everybody's freaking out. This is when I need to do something. And I was still freaked out.
Yeah.
But it worked out.
Yeah. How did you like, even though you were freaked out, how did you get over the fear, and what made you still move forward?
Because I wanted to stick to the advice that I gave everybody else, is to do what everybody else is, like what the mainstream is doing, do the opposite, right? When the stock market is down, you buy. Yeah. That's when you make it.
I know. What's so crazy about that is it makes so much sense. Like, it's the truth, but it's hard to do.
It is. It freaks you out because we're human beings and we're fear, and we have a lot of fear. Yeah. Right? It's anxiety. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And everybody else is doing this. I don't but that's and so I took my own advice, and I still was anxious and stressed, just because you're like, well, is the world going to end? Yeah. You know?
I've been there, and then I said to myself, well, if the world ends, we have a whole different problem.
Yeah, exactly.
We got to hedge a different way. That's what guns and a month of food supply, gold, silver, that's the different hedge, And
I think that's what I go, if this COVID thing just completely goes sideways, then everybody goes sideways. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter. It's like, I'm not going to be protected from it. Yeah. So you just lean into it. And it's the same thing with, dollar cost averaging in the stock market. People are like, oh, the stock market freaks me out. I'm like, it shouldn't, because it's incredibly simple if you do it the way, like even Warren Buffett talks about. It's like every 2 weeks when you get paid, put X amount in there, no matter what the market's doing. You don't even pay attention to it. But that fear of, well, the market's down, should I put that extra $1,000 in the market or whatever they do? And it's yes. Yeah. And trust it. Yeah. Because hopefully history repeats itself, because the market's shown, just like in real estate, that it does a certain thing over long periods of time. So.
Yeah, it's if you sell when you're down or when you're fearful. That's the
when
problem.
You lose.
Yeah, and I think one key thing you said there, because I've played the stock market more as a gambling game than a consistent discipline strategy, right? And I think that discipline always equals destiny. So if your plan, you're only as good as your plan. So if you're like, stock market's scary if you don't have the information and you're trying to gamble, trying to get in and out, and then you're like guessing and you're like second guessing all the time. But if, like you said, you have a plan, and the plan is to dollar cost average in, to take a portion of your money, knowing that over the long run, history has shown that it works well, then boom, you got a good plan, stick to the plan, and then stay disciplined. I have a friend who did that, like all the way through, and exactly like you're saying, he did it specifically. He's like, you know what? Like, he believes in crypto, where it's going, etc. And he just said, I'm just going to dollar cost average into these over time. Like, when it was up, he's dollar cost averaging. When it's down, he's dollar cost averaging. He's auto set it. Yeah. And now all of a sudden, it came out of that crazy 2-year bear market. And now it's wherever it is, what it is, but he's still it's just automated. He's sticking to the plan because he doesn't believe it. It doesn't matter to him what it is today. It's what is it in 10, 20 30 years.
You got to really look at that and go, well, how old are you? Yeah. I mean, it's compound interest does what it does. Yeah. And it just shows, but it's weird if you trust the process. But you got to look at your fear and be aware of the fear. Yeah. And go, this is a trigger to lean in.
Yeah. And I think one key thing is automate. Like, because one way that you can, like, I think one way he probably took the fear out is it's an automated system, right? So, like, he gets his paycheck, it's automated. So he's dollar cost averaging automatically. So he's not like looking at it and having to do that physical thing. So
because then you're like, well, I'm going to wait a day. Yeah. No, I'm going to wait. Oh, wait. And then you just don't do it or something, exactly. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So I think that's a smart.
Cool. I was going to talk about running.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool, man. Yeah. So tell me about, well, you're a soccer player. I played soccer from 5 till 17, actually.
Yeah, it's a good sport.
I love soccer.
Isn't it fun?
Yeah, loved it. Yeah. So I'm a awful long distance. I'm a fast twitch all the way. Yeah. Right. That's just
you're built like that.
Just fast twitch. Yeah. So when I got it, like, we were always punished in sports for running. Is like, that's your punishment.
Yeah.
Football, baseball, right? Yeah. And when I got done with baseball, I didn't do shit for like 10 years. And then I'm like, I got to do something to challenge myself. Yep. That I suck at, that hurts, and it's painful mentally and physically. Yeah. So I started running. Yeah. And doing Ironmans and stuff like that. But
because you're kind of psycho.
Yeah, a little bit. So what, for me, and I've always wanted to like write something about this. Yeah. Is that when I run, it's like something changes in me. Like, I just become a better all around everything. Like, my mind is on fire. Literally, I wish I had like something to dictate into when I'm running, because ideas are flying through my head.
Yeah, voice memo.
Yeah. So tell me about like how you got into the running, because I see you guys up there. getting ready to run.
Yeah, we love running. I agree with you. Actually, Momenticize, the name of our companies, it came from running. You know, like I told you, I had that identity crisis. Played soccer, and I would always look at runners. I'd be like, dude, you're running not after a ball. Like, what are you doing? Like, I would be like, those guys are kind of. I'd be like, you guys are running nerds or something. That's what I would always say. Turns out those guys have it hacked. Like, the runner high is a real thing. The like self-discipline, the mental like movement meditation. I was like, once I started running, I was like, no, actually, you guys aren't running nerds. You guys got this whole life thing hacked up, right? Like, and so I got really, after a while, I got really addicted to running. Momenticize was born out of that idea, you know, doing something difficult, doing something that's difficult, and conquering that moment. That momenticizes you into being able to do the next thing, right? Living in the moment, conquering the moment, so that you can take that energy and move forward. And so running's changed my life. It gave me an outlet. I have a really addictive personality. I've always struggled with when drugs were part of that. I've struggled with it. I had a really hard time, almost lost my soccer career, got suspended for a year. I had a real hard time just because of how my personality is, right? And so there's things, if you have an addictive personality, like, that's not a problem. Just channel it in the right way. And running was a huge way for me to do that and get a good release. And so it's completely changed my life, and it's helped me. If ever I feel pressure or stress or whatever, whenever this ball of inside energy, if I go for a run, just like, maybe initially it's hard, and then all of a sudden, you know, it lets me release it all. And just like you said, some of my best ideas come from running, and it's really changed my life.
Yeah, so. It's funny that you brought up the addictive personality and the identity crisis. And if you don't manage it, you're not going to change your personality. You can learn about it, but you have to manage it. And the running, the trail running for me especially, is because in trail running you have to pay attention. Everything except what's inside your head. Sometimes you got like rocks everywhere, and I really love the trail running. Are you guys doing mostly road?
Well, depending on what we're training for. You know, we were just training for a Eugene Marathon, so we were doing a lot of road in there because that's a road race. But I agree with you that trail running is, especially in Bend, is some of the best in the world. And, you know, it's like a mind clear too, right? If I go when I start on a run, usually it's like thinking about everything's like boom, 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 boom. And then when I hit a certain pace at a certain time, all of a sudden it's just, everything's gone. I'm just breathing.
You know, just almost hear like,
Yep.
And you're just like, I could go like this speed for it. It's weird because I hit that when I was training for my last ultra. Where I did a lot of road for that one. And
what ultra
my tempo,
was
it was I did the Smith Rock.
The Run the Rock? Yeah, that thing's a beast.
Dude. It beats you up. But the road running, the tempo runs that's when I would hit that. Not the slow.
Exactly.
Because the slow one's kind of, you actually have to slow yourself down to keep your heart rate at a certain level. But the tempo run, I'd hit this thing, I'm like, I feel like I'm like floating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which it wasn't floating for me, but it seemed like it.
Yeah, you're right. That's all that matters. It's the runner high that's a legit real thing. And I think it's also, you know, like for me, the marathon, when you're competitive or have an addictive personality, or just like the way that I work, if I have a goal that I'm working towards, that journey, I get so much pleasure in the little devil inside of my head, like trying to talk me out of waking up early to go for the run and then conquering his ass, right? I get a lot of pleasure in that journey of trying to make it happen. And then the race itself is one peak, like it's enjoyment. It's like, did it happen? But the journey along the way, and having something, having something to work towards for me is,
it's almost like, I don't just run. So you sound similar to me in that if I start going for a couple runs, I'm like, I go start looking at races.
Exactly. Like, you're ready to go.
I gotta take it to like, I did a half Ironman. Now I gotta go full Ironman. What's next? It's like a 100-mile race. I keep thinking about this 100-miler in the back of my mind. I haven't.
You better do it.
Well, I gotta do it, but I'll be honest with you, like, you know, the time commitment.
I know, that's big.
With little kids.
And the business.
It can be incredibly disruptive. So when I discovered jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu checks all those boxes. All those boxes. However, I still think running has that something that fires me in my business.
Yeah.
There's something correlated between running and my business. It has to do with creativity.
Yeah.
So it's a trip, man.
So jiu-jitsu did get you going on that. I like that. The ultra running, I agree. I've run 200 milers, and it is one of the most personally amazing experiences because of everything you have to face. But you know, my wife also, I did that before I had kids, and then as soon as you have kids, because you're doing, I mean, the training you're doing there just
different.
Different, and just the energy output you're putting out, right? Like I remember even at that time, the amount of miles you're getting in, and then just like on the weekends, if you have a full-time job and then you're doing training for a 100-mile ultra, that eats up like most of that day or half the day, and then how you feel after, like
you're not going to give anything to your family.
Exactly. So it shifts. Yeah. So it's smart that you pivoted there.
So I would just do like, I think like a 50 miler might be a good.
It's a perfect sweet spot.
But even those 50 Ks with high elevation, like a 10,000 foot elevation, I've done one. I did one at 50 K, and I'm like, okay, I've done Ironmans and stuff. I can do this, but it was 10,000
up and down
in 30 miles.
I know.
So basically, it's like this.
Up and down. Yeah.
And you're sliding down, and you're climbing up. So anyway, I'm taking a break from that, and then maybe maybe I'll join you guys on your slow day.
Yeah, you should.
Be my fast day.
We'll do it. We just love running with people. So yeah, we'll definitely do that. That sounds.
But the cool thing about it, though, running in a group like you guys do, and what I would do is I'd probably step up my game mentally. Yeah. Because when you're by yourself, and it's just all you feel is pain.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah.
Right, but if you're like it distracts you, and you're keeping up and having a little conversation. Yeah. And it just.
Running when we run long runs with like a herd or a group, 12 or 15 or 18 miles go by so much faster than if you're alone. And the other thing I love about runners in general, it's so cool. You can run in a group, you take the energy on, like you said, you elevate, you run faster. But what's cool about running in general is it's a you versus you game, right? So you could go do a race, take 5th place in the race, but got your personal best. And that's a huge deal. Like and everyone, what's so cool about runners is they're racing you. They want to take you down. But if you get your personal best, they're like high-fiving you. They're like, well done. There's not another sport where it's like in soccer, it's not like I'm not going to be, if I lose the soccer game, I'm like, oh, but I got my personal best
good work,
passes.
Bro.
You know, it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. So I like that about running is it's definitely a you versus you game. And
it's fun to see the gains, man. When you start, for me especially as not a very good long distance runner, like when I'm like, wow, man, like you see those gains, and it takes a little bit of time to build it, but it's super rewarding.
Yeah. Oh, cool, yeah.
Good. I think that's good. I mean, do you have any questions we're good to go here? I think that we covered a lot in our hour, and it's what's cool about this interview especially is that I had no idea that a lot of the stuff that we talked about. I didn't know that you were an athlete. Like that's what's so cool about this platform.
Yeah, it's it's a great way to do it, and I appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun. I think it's really cool to see where most people start getting fearful, like you said, in the time that mortgages aren't flowing, that you're doubling down and getting creative. And my hat's tip, because a lot of times what happens to men, especially like you said, you're 47, right? They're not willing to like make pivots or changes or adjust, and you're just going like head. Let me hit this social media. I know it's going to give right. Like my hat's tipped on that, because it's not easy for people to put themselves out there like that. So
well, it is, and you start comparing yourself to other people, and you're like, well, maybe I'm not doing it well. But then you look at people come in. I'm like, well, I'm just doing the best I can with what I got. People are looking at go, well, that's amazing. I'm like, well, thanks. And I look at you and go, man, I got to get to that level. So
you'll get there. It's just step by step, and
right on,
man. Appreciate it.
Cool.
Awesome.